Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focusing on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe Ojeho.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And today we're looking back at an exciting match week 3 of the Canadian Premier League. 4 matches, all with different results, making the table situation look a little bit different now in the third week. But plenty of action to talk about, Mike. And it was a pretty good weekend all around in terms of results.
Yeah, a few games where we got to have a little bit of a rest through periods of them, but otherwise pretty good, pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of talking points to dive into. But before we do that, make sure to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, and as well as Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, so you can find our beautiful faces on there and all the graphics that we have as well. And as well, follow Canadian Soccer Daily, where we'll be uploading clips from the shows as the weeks progress. But let's jump into the first match of the match week, I guess. It was York United hosting Vancouver FC. And I'll be honest, Mike, I did not see it turning out this way. A 3-0 victory for York United at home, their first win of the season. And it was a pretty emphatic win overall. Goals from Brian Wright, surprisingly, in the 70th and the 93rd minute. And Denis Ilanovic had his first goal for York United, sandwiched in between the two Wright goals in a display that I think not many people were expecting from York United in terms of the fact that they were struggling to get goals, and that's something that they've been struggling with for a while. And for them to get 3 goals like that against an informed team, I mean, Brian Wright in 23 minutes equaled his goal tally from last season already. So that goes to show the kind of match that this was. Let's start at the beginning, though. In the first half, obviously, there's a little bit of a talking point with the way that the game progressed, because there were early shouts for a possible red card on Vasco Fry. Vasco Fry had a little bit of a tangle with Frank Stirring, who was a surprise, entry to the game, as we mentioned on last week's preview episode. And he almost came in and came straight back out because of the look of that injury. You can see there on the graphic there was a pretty nasty stamp just above the ankle, or maybe even on the ankle. Thankfully, he was all right and he was able to continue to play. But I think Vasco Fry was a very lucky boy there to not get a red card. At first glance, I thought that it was just like, oh, he was just trying to find a place to plant his feet, and it just so happened to find Frank Stirring, and that might still be the case. But the fact that upon replay, you could see that he kind of looked down, maybe has a little shades of a little bit of guilt on Vasco Fry. But either way, a lucky boy. Did you think this was a red card when you first saw it, Mike?
I think I was like you're saying there, when you watched it in real time, it looked like maybe stumbling around and like bodies were being thrown in. It looked sort of slightly innocent, but when you look back at the replays, and like, not to get bogged down in it, if like in other leagues where you've got VAR, they would have come back and probably sent him off for that. I think it was very lucky. If I remember rightly, I'm trying to think back to the game now, but I think himself and the referee, both Canadian Peruvians, he was very handsy with the referee, and seemed to be let off slightly with. I don't think other referees may have appreciated his arms around their shoulders quite so much in the game.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's interesting. I didn't know that the referee was also Canadian Peruvian. Interesting. No, but I get. But that was a huge talking point in a rather quiet first half in this match. I think both sides were not up to par, really. I think they were both slowly warming up. Vancouver FC, you can sort of understand. They've had only 2 days of rest between the Cavalry match and the Canadian Championship and this match. They've had 3 matches in 8 games. And, again, the fact that Afshin Gabby has barely done any rotation up until this point. Kind of meant that he had quite a few tired legs in the match, and it
Yeah.
certainly seemed that way because the way that they were playing. I mean, both sides I think had one chance each that went close. I think Austin Ritchie had a chance towards the end of the first half,
Yeah,
and,
it dragged it
right
wide.
before the exactly, and right before the end of the half, Moses Dyer had a header that went over. But aside from that, it was pretty tame from
Yeah.
both sides. And from Vancouver FC, I think they'll be quite disappointed in themselves given how strong they've been performing at home and
Mm.
how lethal that they've looked in the first two games to not only in the first half but across the entire game, really not really offer much attacking
No.
wise. Did you just feel when you were looking at the way that they were playing, especially in the first half, that did you feel that it was mostly because of the tired legs, or do you think there was something else to do with the fact that they weren't playing all that well?
Yeah, I'll let you into the world of a person in England watching the Canadian Premier League. This game kicked off at midnight, and I
Mm,
remember Vancouver having possession from about the 10th minute to the 20th minute, and I don't honestly remember York getting many touches of the ball in that 10-minute period. But I don't remember Vancouver having any touches in the opposition's penalty area. It was just recycled possession over and over and over. And after a while, I didn't realize that it'd been going on quite so long, and I fell asleep on the sofa and had to watch this game back the next morning. It was almost like counting sheep, counting the passes, because it was constant. They kept the ball, and they were always trying to move York around, but it just wasn't very quick, and York just were able to defend. No, at no point did Vancouver really threaten. And then York did the same thing. Watching it back the next morning, York started to try and get back in the game in like the 20th minute, and they had this sort of 10-minute period where, okay, we've got a lot more of the possession, but we're still not having a shot either. And that seemed to be the way of the first half until, like you say, those two chances came for either side at the end.
yeah, I do think on the balance of play, and especially if you look at the stats in the first half that I pulled up here, York definitely looked like the better side across all 90 minutes by the end of the first half. They had a little bit more possession, six shots at two shots on target to zero, one big chance that was also missed to zero for Vancouver FC. So Vancouver FC really didn't offer much at all
No.
in that first half, which I think, like I mentioned, was quite disappointing for them. And I think, especially considering the second half, how it went with York really picking up steam. And I thought Vancouver would also use that opportunity to wake up and, make some fresh substitutions, get them some fresh legs in there and really, go and build for a fight. And I was thinking
Yeah.
that if Vancouver FC could do it, then it'd be maybe a 1-goal game. It'd be whoever would make the mistake, as both teams would rev up towards the end of the match. But really, it was only York United that did that. Vancouver FC kind of fell by the wayside, and by the 70th minute, that's when Brian Wright had his chance to score, and he put it away, and then it was all one-way traffic with
Yeah.
the goals with Brian Wright and Denis Alanovic. And looking at the goals, Mike, were you impressed by Brian Wright and by the attack of York United and the way that they constructed those opportunities? And in a huge contrast to last season, in the last few games, they actually put them away.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Wright's had a really nice start to the year, work ethic wise, and he's really put a shift in each game for his team. Like he's running across the pitch, he's trying to hold the ball up, he's trying to build, trying to bring players into the game, and he laid on the goal for Selenovic. So 2 goals and assist in that one's really, I think it's what he's deserved from the work he's put in. But that first goal, especially, we started to see York actually play quite quickly and positively with the ball. It wasn't just keep possession. Let's see if we can create a chance. They made a chance with the way that they were actually playing sort of quick balls into feet and moving on and trying to find space to receive. And that just wasn't happening in the first half from either side. And at times, York, on and off, they sort of drift in and out of games. You see a little bit of that in these last games, but I mean, the Forge game before, they showed signs in the first half of trying to wake up and could be a threatening force. But once Forge took the lead, they didn't really the game was going one way. So yeah, this one I was impressed with him. His movement to get in that space to then finish was great, and the confidence he had for the third goal. I know that it's late on and it's the third goal, but the way he chips, like, goes past Callum Irving, who's rushed out, and then has the confidence to then just jink around. Is it Rocco Romeo who came back and take his time and not panic and rush and just try and, because he did earlier on in that game in the first half, Callum Irving came out, I think, and palmed it away, or there was a header from David Norman Jr. I can't remember what it was, but he picks it up on the edge of the box and smashes it first time as hard as he can, and it goes out for like, it was like a field goal rather than a shot goal. I forget the situation in the first half. I think it was David Norman Jr. heading it, and Callum. It was a miscommunication between him and Callum Irving, but there just wasn't any composure in that point from Brian Wright. But in the second half, he really showed it, and I was really impressed with it.
Yeah, I think everybody was. I think
I mean,
really
this season, do you think? Sorry, I really wanted to ask you this. Do you think he looks more athletic this year? I think last year he was a bigger build, but he wasn't as athletic. He wasn't working the centre backs as much as he could. Whereas this year he looks more toned, more ready, and more like committed to just forcing the defense into headaches.
Yeah, no, I think that he looks more, because again, when you say toned and when you say built, that can mean many different things. But I think last season Brian Wright was more of a physical presence, but I think that little maybe hampered him a little bit, and he wasn't running as much or as pressing as much or as working as hard, like you mentioned. I think this season, I don't know if it's the fact that he slimmed down a bit and he became a little bit leaner, or if it was something else, more of a mental aspect. But he has turned a new leaf. This is a very different Brian Wright, because even though he didn't score in the earlier games, we were praising him for his work rate, the fact that he was creating chances, that he should have maybe had another assist or two, and the fact that he was one of like the better aspects of York United's attack, even though they weren't firing on all cylinders. And I think he finally got his just reward in this match with the 2 goals and the assists, because he deserves to be praised for the way that he's upped his game in the preseason and the lead up to these games. So really impressive from Brian Wright. And I mean, by the end, the final whistle, 3-0, a sumptuous win from York United, their first win of the season. And not only did it shock everybody, I think it also kind of set the tone as like, this is what York United can be. This is how good York United can be once they actually play their football, once they actually have everybody working in sync and working as hard as they can. And it made them look like a side to be reckoned with, which I think a lot of people at the beginning of the year did not really see from them. And the biggest question for them is consistency. Did you see anything in this match that made you think that they could keep this as a consistent thing? Or do you see this maybe as more of a one-off because of the other issues surrounding the team?
It's tough because I mean, as good as Brian Wright was in this game, getting the goals and the assist, you worry going into matches if he's not in this exact same form and he doesn't get a goal, who's going to fill in with those? Because Austin Ritchie started up front, and that was a really interesting thing that Mo Babuli was playing as a left winger. Started off that game in deeper in midfield. We mentioned before the match when we did our preview, like just as it was about to kick off, saying that York needed to maybe try and get him on the ball a bit more. And it was interesting that he got put out there, and it gave him a chance to make cut inside, because Boteo has been fantastic with his like getting up and down that wing, similar to how like Conde Luke does it for Pacific. He fulfills both the left back and the left wing position simultaneously, and it gave Mo Babuli that chance to sort of drift inside and pick out spaces and try and get on the ball. And I mean, he nearly created that chance for Max Ferrari, who could have finished early on in the game purely through that sort of approach. So they showed signs of being really good, but it is the worry that they're just not going to be consistent finishers, and players have got to step up. If Brian Wright can be a big scorer this year, fantastic for them. But again, I look around that team and I don't know where the other goals would come from.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Selanovic with this goal, like he was somebody that I think some York fans had high expectations of him coming
Mm.
in from abroad. If he can get going and help out
Yeah.
the attack a little bit more, he had some good spells even before the goal. I think that could be something that is solid for the attack. I also want to praise York United's defense because
Yeah.
that's something that was a huge thing in the last few games. Against Forge, they were all sixes and sevens at the back, and with the return of Juan Cordova, who had a really good match
Yeah, he
in
did
the
look good.
in the way that he set up for Brian Wright, and he was just a nuisance for Vancouver FC down that right side. He's small, but he's really physical, and
Yeah.
he gets stuck in, and he fights
Yeah.
for it, and he's somebody that you wouldn't expect that of him, but
I
I
liked
think if yeah.
I don't know if you feel the same about him. What I really liked about it was the fact that he looked like he had a good game, but it looked like that wasn't the best version of him. It was that sort of that
Mm.
weird feeling you think, oh, this is a great start, and I can see it being a bit better, like even better going forward.
No, yeah, exactly. I feel like
Mm.
this is just the beginning of Juan
Yeah.
Cordova for York United, which is really exciting for them. Because when they're missing a player like Paris G, who could have played on the right back, also was at center back. Now he's playing at left back.
Yeah.
Juan Cordova is a little bit of a similar profile, being able to play on the right or on the left, and being physical, being dangerous, um, just being a focal point in the wide areas. I think that's going to be something that can help
Mm.
York United a lot. And Frank Stirring was solid as well. He
Yeah.
had to contend with Alejandro Diaz and with Moses Dyer, and he managed to deal with that well,
Mm.
obviously alongside Noah Batney. And I think that hopefully as York United continue to build and they continue to grow, they'll be able to find a good balance between some of the
Mm.
younger players that they have at the back and the more experienced players, so they can have another good defensive showing as they did against Vancouver. I think, yeah, signs that that York United showed
Mm.
were all positive after this game.
On the other side of that, so you mentioned Van, someone who covers Vancouver regularly. What were your thoughts on? I mean, James Cameron and TJ Tahi hooked at half time. Was that from your experiences or maybe anything you've heard? Was that expected, or was it just the fact that they weren't happy? Actually, Gottby wasn't happy with their performances. Do you think?
I think it was the latter. I think they just weren't
Mm.
happy with the
Yeah.
performances, I'll be honest. And again, I feel bad because I talked about James Cameron before in the game against Cavalry and when he came in, and now it's when you don't get regular game time, when you're expected to just start after making no substitution
Yeah.
appearances in the league, right? He obviously had oh wait, no, in the Caden Chung injury, he came
Yeah.
in Cavalry, but in the league he hasn't had any showing before this.
Mm.
You're gonna struggle. And I feel like same with TJ Tahi. These are players that you have to be, I think, a little bit more mindful with in playing time, and then giving them 10, giving them 15, sort of the same way that he was treating Mickey Kintav, where it's like you get them in the match, last 5, 10, 15, just so they can get a feel of it.
Yeah.
And then when they have to start, they're a little bit more prepared rather than starting TJ Tahi right off the bat in a match away from home against York United after not playing at all in the first two matches. Or not starting in the first two matches. He played a little bit. I feel like you need to be able to find that balance between playing the young players and playing,
Mm.
obviously the new experienced players. And yeah, I think that it was just purely performance based, and it's unfortunate. Hopefully, James Cameron and TJ can come back stronger from it. But
Yeah.
I will be very curious to see the way that now that they don't have Canadian Championship because they lost against Cavalry, and it's back to basically one, maybe two games a week, how Afshin Gotby deals with rotation, and if it's going to be purely based on performance, or if it's also going to be because he wants to give some young players a chance. I mean,
Mm.
you look at their starting 11 and they don't have a single under 21 player in it.
No.
So the only way they can get those under 21 minutes is off the bench, which is a stark contrast
Yeah.
from
To last
from
one.
what it was, a complete 180 from last year.
Yeah.
So yeah, very curious to see how Vancouver FC's lineups continue to evolve, and hopefully we see not a lot less of those hook the young players at halftime, because mentally that could be a little bit demoralizing.
Yeah.
But yeah, good match overall. A good way to start the match week. Now we're going to move on to the second match, which was Halifax against Atletico Ottawa. And it was from a great match to another great match with a lot of talking points in this one. Halifax Wanderers at home, they were hoping for the home advantage to work in their favor, and unfortunately it did not. They lost 3-1 to Atletico Ottawa. Del Campo opened the scoring in the 39th minute. Manny Aparicio made it 2-0 in the 56th. Balu Tabla made it 3-0 in the 73rd, but Riley Ferrazzo scored Halifax's first goal of the season in the 89th minute. They had to wait almost 3 full games for a goal for Halifax, which goes to show some of the struggles that they're going through right now. It was a cagey start between the two sides. I think they really didn't have a lot of rhythm going between them. I think they were canceling each other out and again warming up in the first 15 or so. But then obviously there was a huge moment early on in the first half, and that was the red card to Lorenzo Caligari. I mean, this one was one that in the moment you look at the match and you look at the way that he rose up and caught Manny Aparicio and you think, ooh, is that a red card? Is that not a red card? Live, it didn't look that bad. You know, it was so early. It was in like the 19th minute.
Yeah.
But then you look at the replay and you look at the ref was right there. And when you're putting your studs up and you're putting your foot and you catch somebody in the chest, it doesn't matter how lightly it is. It doesn't matter if it was intentional or not. You're always going to give the referee an opportunity to give you your marching orders. And that's what the referee did. And a lot of people will call it harsh. A lot of people, I know Halifax fans will call it the wrong call. And, you know, it's unfortunate to see a red card so early in the game because it kind of ruins the match a little bit because it completely changes dynamic. We've seen quite a few red cards at the beginning of the CPL. I don't know what that says about either the referees or the players, but quite a few red cards already to start the season. And it couldn't have happened, I think, to a worse player for Halifax because Lorenzo Caligari is so integral to the way that Halifax love to play, and losing him, having that massive hole and having to transition into a 4-4-1-1 20 minutes into the match. It wasn't like, you know, it was a tactical shift because things weren't working. No, it was a necessary change because of this red card. It really threw a spanner in the works for Halifax. When you saw, you know, the replay for the red card, did you think that was valid? Did you think that was a good red card? Did you think it was a little bit harsh from the ref?
Yeah, I think it was a red. Like, I think we've just got to be wary of. We can't just say it's only a red card if the other player gets seriously hurt. Like, it's just lucky that the player hasn't been hurt. Like, in those incidents, they could have been. Like, and thankfully he hasn't. But yeah, you've put your stats up that high at someone. Like, that's the rule. It doesn't matter how badly injured the other person is. Like, that's still a red card. And like, I can understand Halifax's frustrations, and like for the neutral and for us, so we've been talking about their opening start to the season. They did go back to the 4-2-3-1. Massimo Ferrin was in. I was really excited for how this could have gone, but after 20 minutes, the game plan's just thrown out the window.
Yep. It felt like this was gonna be a better start overall for Halifax. I feel like it was, like you mentioned, the formation back and the ability to have these players playing in a more familiar position, the home crowd, a huge test against Ottawa, and then, you know, the goal, the red card happened. And here's the thing: even though they went 10 men down, they had actually a pretty good first half overall. You look at some of the stats, like the ones I got up there, and even though, yes, they didn't dominate possession, they were really good in transition. They outshot Atletico Ottawa 6-2. They had the equal shots on target. They had one big chance that was missed, and they looked in it. They didn't look they were laying down and dying, and they even looked like they were just sitting back and defending and defending and defending. No, they had some threats in transition, and I feel like Patrice Geyser can be proud of his boys for that first half performance because of the fact that going 10 men down is a huge hit, not only physically, because you now 10 against 11, but also mentally. And they responded relatively well. And it was sad, I guess, from a Halifax perspective, that in the 39th minute, 20 minutes after the red card, and after playing quite well after the red card, Ruben Del Campo getting his first goal
Yeah,
for Atletico Ottawa, which is great because we were talking about how he was a little bit lackluster last season.
yeah.
So scored a goal finally for Atletico Ottawa in this match. And when going into halftime, it was 1-0. And did you feel at that point that it was like, okay, Ottawa's got the goal, it's got the extra man advantage, that's about it, it's just gonna be a one-way traffic in the second half?
Yeah, I think what we've seen from Ottawa is they grow into games quite a bit as well. I mean, they then drift out of them at times, as we see when they go to a back five. But this group of players look like they're building something. And when you're playing against 10 men, they've got the quality on the pitch that can end up getting over the edge. And I mean, I think they've preyed on the fact that obviously the red card and you're going against 10 men, but Halifax are still sort of I think Patrice Guys are still trying to work out where all these parts fit. I think he had it looks like from the outside looking in, from way off, so I could completely be way off this, but he had a plan. This back three hasn't gone quite as he wanted, and he's gone back to the 4-2-3-1. You put in a bit of pace with Ferrin. Just being quick doesn't win you games, but it gives players like Aidan Daniels and Rampersad different options, and it makes it a little bit harder for the defense to deal with. So they had those parts there, but they just couldn't use them. Like I say, in the first half, they were able to use that in transitional moments, but it's only going to get you so far with such a strong Atletico Ottawa side, who, I mean, getting Ollie Bassett back in sort of the middle of the pitch really sort of helps out as well, and got a bit out of the others players too.
Yeah, exactly. I think Ottawa really took the second half by the scruff of the neck, and as much as you try to defend, as much as you are trying to play well, being a 10 men down, a player like Manny Aparicio is going to pop up and he's going to score no matter what you do.
Yeah.
I like Ottawa are a little bit inevitable in that sense. As soon as Aparicio's goal went in, I think it was pretty much wraps at that point.
Yeah.
I think there was nothing else really that you could expect from Halifax except just to try to keep fighting. Balou Tabla's goal in the 73rd really put the nails in the coffin there.
Yeah.
I think for Halifax, what I didn't really like, obviously with the red card, it changes things, but Halifax not really having a dedicated striker in their attack was something that I think cost them, not having Valevsky or Thiago Coimbra. They didn't really have like a focal point in the attack, and they had a lot of missed opportunities because they were getting balls into the box even from the first half. They were getting a lot of balls into the box, but there's no one there to meet them. And I felt like having a dedicated striker there was really good. And on the other side with Atletico Ottawa, they were very, very efficient because I think they saw that Halifax's defense was dropping in too deep as soon as they started going into the box. And so they just kept doing cutback after cutback after cutback, and all three goals were off cutbacks. And a really funny moment was on the call. I was on the call on Zoom, and Alex Gonga-Ruzic was on the call with Zoom, and he asked him, those three cutback goals, was that something that was, that was planned? Is that something that you wanted from your team? And Carlos Gonzalez says, "Do you see my smile?" That answers the question. But yeah, I think for Ottawa, it was a good victory overall. The 3-1. Obviously, they'll be annoyed at the end for the goal that was conceded to Riley Ferrazzo. But did you look at this match and feel like, yes, this is the super team Atletico Ottawa, or were you still not convinced? Because I'm still not really convinced that they're clear favorites. Like, I'm more convinced of Forge really right now, and I than Atletico Ottawa, and we'll get to Forge in a bit, because they obviously have talent all around the pitch, and they have sparks in the attack, and they have the capability of turning a game on the head because they have so many game changers. But it feels like they're relying on these individual brilliance rather than performing as a cohesive unit, strong enough to defeat anything in front of them. Is that your thoughts as well?
Yeah, I think the fact that this was against 10 men for so long makes it hard to properly judge, because maybe they weren't playing at their top level because their optimum powers, because they were knowing, well, we're playing against 10 men, we'll wear them out eventually and the chances will come. So maybe like we can say that, but I mean, if this was them playing like their hearts out, then that does make you think, like, yeah, things aren't quite clicking as perfectly as people may have thought, on paper at least, when these signings all came in.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I mentioned, there's still some like really good performances from some of the players. I think Chris Twardek was really good at right back. I think he's been the most consistent player out of Ottawa right now. I think obviously Aparicio, the 2 goals that he's had, show that he's always a danger. And his goal, while it was really good, obviously, and the fact that he's able to do that sliding, the fact that I was so annoyed with Probo in that one because he just let him go and there was no one around them. They was just free as a bird in the box there. But yeah, some really, really good performances individually from Atletico Ottawa. And I do think that for Halifax, the game changed when Jeremy Gagne Laparé came in. I think that he had a pretty good, I don't know, I don't remember how long it was, but like a short stint as he was subbed on, and obviously got that fantastic assist for Razzo.
Yeah, really well goal as well.
Yeah, really well taken goal. That first touch was incredible to just set him up and everything, and really well, like a great finesse curled effort there. A little too late, obviously, for Halifax, but hey, the storylines were going to be that Halifax hadn't scored a goal in 3 matches.
Yeah,
they scored a goal at the very end of the 3rd match. So, it takes a little bit of the pressure off, I think, for Halifax. But yeah, I think for Ottawa, Carlos Gonzalez is going to be very, very happy with his team so far, because undefeated in 3 matches on 7 points. 3-1 against the Wanderers, 2-1 against York United. They've scored every single game, so they haven't been shut out at all. They've conceded every single game, which is a little bit of a concern, I think, especially because you've brought in, Didic to be the rock in defense, and they haven't managed to get both Ingham and Yesley a clean sheet. Speaking of which, we do want to talk about this incredible moment. Coast to coast, we're all about talking the goals and tactics and stats.
Let's get to the real nitty-gritty now.
Let's get to the real nitty-gritty, which was a woman in the crowd. This is what I love about the CPL, is that because there are microphones in the crowds, and I don't know if it's because they're so close to the sports sections, but sometimes you can hear like individual people having random conversations, or you can hear people with their chants, and obviously there's a lot of profanity in it. So I feel bad for Adam Jenkins and the other, One Soccer commentators to not call attention to that, or to apologize at times if they're being really loud for it. But sometimes it can produce gems, like in this one. Mike, I'll let you talk about it, because you're the one that brought it up and wrote it down. But yeah, tell us about this incredible chant that we heard.
Yeah, watching the highlights back this just before we were recording, just to refresh my memory, and it comes in, and I missed the first 2 words of it, so it could be something else, but either it's Nathan Ingham or it's Nate. To the tune of Nate, he's our man. If he can't do it, Yesley can. Fantastic. I'm so in on that.
Yeah, that's hilarious, because it's like, it gives him praise, but also it's like, don't be too comfortable,
Yeah.
It's like, you're our guy, but there's another guy there just in case. It's so
And that's a
funny.
perfect wholesome chant. Be like, yeah, no, bring the family down to the game.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one that you want to be able to keep on the broadcast and not have to wish that you were able to bleep
Yeah.
live shows and the live games like that.
Yeah, you're not going to have
Um,
your 7-year-old child saying, "What does this mean?"
no, 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 you're not gonna have that. You're not gonna have that at all. But yeah, the match ended in favor for Atletico Ottawa, and for Halifax Wanderers, that is 3 defeats on a
Mm,
bounce. Only 1 goal scored. They've conceded 6 goals. It's been a tough time for Patrice Geyser because this home match was supposed to be a huge reset for them, and obviously the red card immediately put them on the back foot.
yeah.
Immediately, you know, put their backs against the walls, and it was really tough. So, I think you could say the Pacific result they deserved better. Vancouver FC was a bad day at the office, and this one, the red card, really blighted their performances. But I think even beyond some of these other things, I don't want to give them too many excuses because I don't think it. I think it just hasn't really been good enough
No.
for Halifax Wanderers and in a lot of their playing styles and a lot of the players and in some of the like they're not as fluid as they were before. They don't feel as comfortable as they were before. They're not playing with that gusto that I really enjoyed last season. Even in the beginning of last season when they were getting draws and draws and draws and draws, they at least were showing a lot more of what
Mm,
they were capable of. There's just was the fact that it wasn't sustainable, but there hasn't been really much this season bar a couple of moments here and there that have really moved the needle for me in their play. And I don't want to be dramatic because it's 3 games in, and like I said, there's a lot of factors in the results that they've had. But some people have been murmuring about maybe a little bit of a panic button
mm,
for Halifax Wanderers because they were supposed to have a really good start to the season, and they're having the complete inverse of that
mm.
with 3 losses in the bounce. Do you feel like it's a time for a little bit of alarm bells for Halifax Wanderers, or do you feel like it's just a case of a bad start with some bad decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like 3 games in and stuff, and we always need to remember Cavalry were at what 1.11 points behind Pacific last season. Still went on to win quite comfortably. So teams can recover from this. But I do agree with you. I think that without trying to sound flippant, it feels like Patrice Geyser's tried too hard to change things from last season to try and outfox the opposition. And he's tried to do different things. He's tried to shake things up a bit too much. Caligari hasn't really played in his position where we've seen him threatening, apart from 19 minutes in this game. And a lot of the other players haven't looked completely comfortable. I think some of the signings have come in for a specific plan, but that plan, it seems that he's looking to move. Well, in this game, he was looking to move on from, and I think what we like, what we love about Patrice Geyser is how passionate he is about
Hmm.
his job, about football, about his players. But maybe sometimes there's that bit where he needs to go. He's so passionate. Right, this isn't working. Maybe he's quickly going. Right, this isn't working. I know. I know. I'm going to change this now. And maybe there's something in this beginning of the season where he's just thinking what we've been working for, what we've been working towards. The players still just don't get it, and maybe I'll have to go back to what was successful last year. And it's just seems like a frustrating thing for the Halifax fans because I really do think they should just carry on similarly, getting tongue tied, to how they ended last season. They did so well. Like things were working hard. They didn't change things up massively throughout the season, and yet still the opposition was struggling to contain them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I like ambition from coaches,
Mm,
obviously, and I like when coaches try to evolve and try to change it up because you want to have the opposition second guessing and stuff like that. I think ambition is something that's required for a coach to be able to
oh,
be
definitely.
successful. But I feel like there's also a case where you can be too ambitious and you try
Mm.
to rock the boat a little bit too much too early. And I feel like just in year 2 of this new project where you're finally honing down on the players that you want, and the players now understand they have a year's worth of tactics that they've been able to digest, and they're really getting into the habit of playing in this style of play to pretty much turn it around almost
Yeah,
completely in terms of this,
exactly.
originally this 3 at the back, this kind of more zonal Vanni Sartini-esque philosophy.
Mm.
It I think obviously I think it's a good way of playing, as evident by the way the Whitecaps are, but it's a painful way of playing because you need a lot to learn from it. It took a
Mm.
while for the Whitecaps to be actually playing as well as they have been this season. It's taken 2+ years to be
Yeah.
able to get to that point, and I think to Vanni Sartini's credit, he's always wanted to play this way. The difference between him and Patrice Geyser is that Patrice had a really good style of play last
Mm.
season, and he's sort of, I don't want to say he's throwing the book in the trash, but he's going to be like, okay, this is a newer, shinier thing that I want to try. Let's do that one.
Yeah.
And it's not really worked out. And it's like, well, you had that really good thing from last year. You
Yeah.
can do small tweaks, you can do small little things here and there to try to improve it, but you don't have to completely,
Exactly. That's
renovate the whole house. You can just
yeah.
make some minor adjustments inside of it. It's yeah, I just think it's
Mm.
again, and we, when you hear from him afterwards and in the post match, he's always like, "Yeah, it was just really unfortunate, but we will get it. We will get it. We just need time. We will get
Yeah.
it." He's really insistent that this will work and his team can get it to work. And if it does, then fantastic.
Mm.
But I just feel like if it doesn't, it might have been a little too early, too soon to be able to change things that drastically. And hopefully they get it soon enough so they don't waste a lot of these early
Mm.
match days and waste the opportunity to get some points because they want to improve on last season. And there were a lot of people's picks for the dark horse on challenging
Yeah.
for the North Star Cup and the North Star Shield. But yeah, it just hasn't really been the start that was expected of them
No.
before the season started.
It's all right. They're just going to Forge next week, so they'll be all right.
Yeah, we saw how good it was for Valour. Yeah, tough match there for Halifax. We will see how they respond in the coming weeks. Obviously, with Canadian Championship as well, and then midweek it's going to be a little bit of maybe a breather for them. Well, you
Mm.
never know. They're facing CS Saint Laurent, so I
Yeah.
don't want to say that it's going to be easy for them, but I think it might be a little bit easier than when they travel to Forge. So let's see how they bounce back in those
Mm.
games.
Yeah.
Speaking of Forge, let's move
Let's
on
go.
to the third match here, the little painful one
Painful.
for Mike here, because it was actually a really good game overall. Both
Really
sides
good.
really gave it in this one, but in the end, it was Forge that won it at the death. A
Mm.
90th minute goal from Noah Jensen put the dagger in the heart after Borges' goal in the 62nd minute was cancelled out by Jordan Faria's goal in the 66th minute, just 4 minutes later. And I love that the first thing in our notes here that Mike wrote was, "Oh, poor Valour."
Oh, it's so
I will
harsh watching that.
Yeah, no, I will give the floor to you because Valor actually had some really good performances
Mm.
in that first half. They actually were threatening in the game, and throughout pretty much the first 45, there were some really good performances, especially by this man here. I mean,
Yeah.
Temi Antonoglu, that's somebody that I've said from game one has impressed me, and he only continues to impress me. He's really becoming that kind of replacement for Matteo De Brian, a different profile, but still as
Mm.
important to their attack as they were being in their width. And one of the things that I was really impressed about before I hand it over to you was the fact that they were playing from the wide areas a lot more efficiently, and they were actually
Yeah.
getting a lot more balls into the box, and that was their main threat. And when you have service from a player like Temian Sonoglu and Zachary Secundu as well on the right
Yeah.
side, who
The
was
other
doing
side's
really
good.
well, you're only gonna, be able to create more and more opportunities for themselves. But yeah, how impressed were you by Valor and their performance in this match, especially in the first half?
Really, really impressed because we saw how good Forge have been at the start of this season, and I mean, they step out in that beautiful kit and they start playing some really beautiful bits of football. And yeah, Antonoglu, absolutely pinpoint crossing. Like it's
Mm.
absolutely pinpoint and it's dangerous. It's going in quick. These aren't just like floated hopeful crosses that keep accidentally coming out. This is pinpoint. This is really, really impressive. And I mean, in the 14th minute, the swivel was just a little bit short of reaching, and that could have they could have taken the lead quite early on. I thought Swivel was good up front. I said it in the first game. I think I was shocked that Hundle was dropped, but Swivel's not the support forward. Like he's the number 9. He's just got to stay within the posts. Just stay in the box within the post and try and get your head on something or get a foot on something. And he did pretty well up there. I was really impressed with Faria and Benate as well. There was signs of how well they were working and doing things that gave you a little bit hope for this team as well. Faria especially. But yeah, it was really exciting that first half. Even going in and both teams creating so many good chances and the goalkeepers as well, both of them exceptional. There was so much of the biggest problem that there always is when you play Forge is the fact that you can create chances, but this Valour side who are still growing and building the chemistry, and I was really positive about it. But you when they went forward and they nearly had these so close opportunities, and you were off the edge of your seat, oh wow, they did that. But when Forge go forward, and I text you going it just feels a little bit more inevitable that they're gonna finish their chance, and they do. They're Forge, and they've got that quality where it's okay. They've created this chance, but you're more confident they're going to finish than any other side.
Yeah, exactly. Because like you mentioned, Valor had some really good opportunities to score, and you argue that they should have scored, especially considering who they were facing. And yeah, second half began, and Forge just need that one opportunity, and they took it through Tristan Borges. And Tristan Borges, what a start to the season that he's had. It really feels like 2019 has been calling, and it's Tristan Borges from 2019 coming back. He's got 5 goal contributions in 3 games to start the season, and it's just back to the very best of Borges, which is something I love to see because he was my favorite player when this season began when I was working at Ford. So super happy for him. But
yeah,
it feels like it's a more mature yet more efficient Borges in the way that he's playing right now in 2024. I feel like in 2019 he was dazzling. He was, he was tricksy. He I think he took a lot of people by surprise because of his youth and because of his energy. I think now we're having a more like a holistic Tristan Borges where he can be as good as a player he is going forward. He's also excellent as a creator, and he's really good in playing as a player to play off of and in combining with players. And it feels like all around Tristan Borges is at the height of his career. This feels like his peak now. Well, 2019, maybe a lot of people say was his peak. He peaked early. I feel like now this is him at his very, very best, across all regards. And I think it also helps that he's being aided and supported by some really good players, because the connection that he has right now with the man right there as well, with Daniel Parra, he's been playing incredible as well. And just down the left side, both of them being able to play together and combining is helping them out so much, and it's making Forge dangerous again, which is something that I feel like they were struggling to do at times last season, is just being lethal in the attack. And we were worried about, Wubin's patience not being there and not being able to get the goals. And Taron Campbell and Jordan Hamilton haven't really been able to do much this season, but they haven't needed to, because you got players like Tristan Borges, David Choinière, and Benny Badibanga just getting the goals for you. And yeah, it's Forge are looking very, very dangerous. Valor had a glimmer of hope just a few minutes later to show how well they were playing when Jordan Faria got that goal. But In the end, as you said, Forge are inevitable. Noah Jensen, really good build-up play from Kone, the young player that came
Hey,
on.
Rob Campbell was a bit sloppy, I thought, on the ball, and I mean it's quite far out. And when you look at it in that moment, that you like Valour could recover, but yeah, it's a bit sloppy, unfortunately. That's how you lose the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
It was a tough one for Campbell because he's been somebody that I think has been quite consistent for
Yeah,
Valour for some time. I mean,
yeah,
when you
playing
have a
everywhere.
whole exactly playing everywhere, when you have a whole club clear out and you're one of the few players that stays behind,
Mm,
it clearly means that the manager and the club rate you and
yeah,
you've shown enough to stay in. So really
yeah,
unfortunate for him, but Forge. Oh, we should talk about also the missed penalty that happened,
yeah.
where Chansopoulos really silly penalty,
Really,
and Benny
really.
Banga came up and everyone thought he was going to put it away. I think you would have bet your house on it that he was
Yeah,
going to put it away, but struck the post and it went out and it gave Valor a little bit of a lifeline
it gave them
at
a
that.
life. They gave
Yeah,
them a lifeline, and then they nearly went up the other end and won it. Like, and Swivel's header, and what an incredible save from Kalongo.
yeah,
It's like that would have been a real like kick in the teeth to Forge, and I think that would have just given Valor. Well, I don't know. It would have either given them the confidence to carry on, or just they were just gone delirious and concede the goal again. We don't know what Valor is now, but they went straight up there, and Kalongo made like he kept forging it. He was incredible throughout this game.
yeah. I think like you mentioned earlier, both keepers were incredible. I think
Mm.
Viscosi was staying on his head in the first half, and
Yeah,
Colunga was standing on his head in the second. There was
yeah.
like anything you can do, I can do better situation there. Just constantly one upping them. But yeah, Noah Jensen in the 90th minute gets the winner, and as well as Valor have played definitely their best performance of the year so far. I
Mm.
feel like if they can make that consistent, then they'll be able to get some points. But for now, I will use the same graphic until they get points. It's another defeat for Phil Dos Santos. That's 3 on the bounce, and they've scored one more than Halifax. They have now 2 goals, conceded 6, not 1 goal, conceded 6. But yeah, being we were mentioning that there was always going to be tough for them on the road to
Yeah.
be able to get any points, and if they could start well, just getting a draw here, a draw there, getting 1 or 2 points to start the season to give them a little bit of momentum, to give them a little bit of positivity would have been great. But 3 match days in and a
Mm.
big old goose egg in the points column. And now, they have Atletico Ottawa twice coming up, once in the Canadian Championship and then again in the league, both
Mm.
in Ottawa, obviously. And then after that, York, Halifax, and Cavalry. So it doesn't really get much easier for Valor. Does this performance, though, give you a little bit of hope that they will be able to get something from the next 4 or 5 games? Or are you still kind of
Yeah.
harboring the same concerns?
I was super impressed because I mean, when I'm not like impressed as in this is a championship winning team, but I was super impressed from what they went from in week 1, where it just looked like players didn't know where they were meant to be. There was no cohesion. There was a few people who seemed to have got a bit of a rapport, but then they had nothing with 3 other players on the team, and things were just really sort of really out of sync, and it was a team that had been cobbled together and thrown on the road. But this game just looked like we were seeing a much better connection amongst the players that gave you positivity to think, okay, well, they're not going to just get rolled over each match. They're going to compete. Like, they're not going to be a perfect team. There's going to be matches we'll see throughout this season where they are very much second best. But this performance gives you that hope that sort of belief that they can compete, and they'll go into these games with Ottawa and then after those 2 with York, where they'll say like we can create chances. I really think Antonoglu and Faria had a really good relationship on that left side. Secunda coming in was really good on the right. Benate's movement, I think Dante Campbell and Verhoeven are getting a little bit of an idea of what they need to do as a 2 in the middle against sort of CPR midfields, and they're also working the better sort of distances between themselves and the defense. And there seems to just things now, like these things take time, and you can do bits in training, but once you get into an actual match, it's different. Like we know that, and I think we're seeing little bits of improvement, which gives me a little bit of positivity about them.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of positives that you can take away from this if you're Phil Dos Santos, and I think that if you can play that way, especially being more consistent and dangerous on the wings, taking advantage of players like Zachary Secunda and like Temi Antonoglu, being able to find. The thing with Valour is that while the wingers have been doing well and Jordan Faria did really well, where I'm still thinking that they're lacking that focal point that they've been needing for over a year in striker, because Sean Hundal, obviously he didn't start this match. He came on. It was Binate instead, and Binate had that opportunity. He had a golden opportunity to put it away after that cross. Didn't manage to do it. It's like that's what you need from your striker. You need your striker to be able to put away chances. And when you're consistently the underdog, and when you're you're not going to have many chances, and the home side is going to grow into the game because they're the home side, you need a player to put them away. You need somebody to take. They only get one chance, and they will take that chance, and they will score it. But aside from that, from Valour, I think everything else that they show defensively and in the way that they've constructed their chances was a big improvement. You got to watch out for those penalties, though. They can't dive in like that, because that was very, very silly. So they want to keep that to a minimum. But yeah, a lot of positives there from Valour FC and from Forge FC. I mean, they're the team to beat right now. They're again proving a lot of people wrong, because a fire start, 3-0 in terms of wins to losses to begin the season. It was a match that you could say maybe they should have not won because of the way that Valour did, but Forge do what Forge do, and they just keep winning. The best start to a season ever from Forge. I believe the fourth team to begin a season with 3 wins after Cavalry 2019, Valour 2021. Oh, how things have changed. And Pacific 2022. So yeah, incredible start, and what I love about Forge right now is that they have such solid performers all around the pitch. You have Borges and Choinière, and obviously Kyle Becker and Ashinori Johnson, the people that have been there for the entire time, really working together and showing up, especially Borges and Choinière, really kind of demonstrating the level that they have. The reason why they've been part of championships teams, it's just on showcase in the first 3 games, and then relying on the young players as well, like Barra and like Malik and Duncan, even Kwasi Poku. When he came on, he looked bright as well.
Yeah.
These are players that you need to have firing on all cylinders, because it's all across the pitch, to be able to compete, and that's exactly what's been happening. Kalongo as well. I mean, Tristan
Borges.
Who is Tristan? Not Tristan Borges. Sorry, Tristan Henry. Who is Tristan Henry? Because Chris Kalongo is the guy now. He is the man at the helm between the sticks, and it's like there hasn't been a dip in quality at all.
No, I mean, like he's my player of the week from this weekend, and I think Viscosi could put in a performance as well that could very well would have made me choose him if it wasn't for some of the bits that Kalongo was doing. It is incredible how him and Owolabi Balewu have just stepped in, taken over from experienced leaders in this team, and just seem to be stepping into their roles with absolutely no fear, and just thinking, yeah, I'm good enough to be, like, obviously I'm going to take this role. Like, there's so much confidence between those two to step in. And the addition, like you've mentioned, Para, like, has been fantastic. There's so much to be said about these athletic fullbacks that really do, like, work well going off hand down the pitch.
Yeah, no, it's funny how it's evolved to that now with these athletic fullbacks in the league. But yeah, really impressive performance from Forge, and we'll see if they can continue forging on in the
Mm.
Canadian Championship in the midweek and in the CPL action on the weekend as well. Now we'll move on to the fourth and final match of this match week. It was a goalless draw between Cavalry and Pacific, and you won't see a more exciting, a more eventful, I think,
Yeah.
goalless draw than this one, because there definitely should have been some goals in
Mm.
this, and I think it should have been coming from the red side of
Definitely.
this, because Cavalry, for majority of the match, dominated. They had, I mean, looking at the stats, they had 20 shots in total,
Mm.
10 either side, but only 3 of them on
That's the big
target.
problem, isn't it?
That's the big problem. I think
Uh,
one of the ones on target was from range from Leighton Brooks.
well, that was a
And
good hit. Yeah.
yeah, that was a fantastic hit.
Mm.
Like that one it was caught, I think, everyone off guard, even
Yeah.
Sean Melvin.
Luckily, not
Uh,
Melvin from a Pacific point of view.
Yeah, no, thankfully Melvin got there just at the end. But yeah, just it felt like they were dominating the first 2/3 of the pitch, and then the final third, credit to Pacific, they were
Yeah, that's
just
it.
shunted out consistently and had to resort from shooting from range to be able to get some shots on target, or where they did get into the box. I mean, how many times did Ali Musi cut inside and just sky it to Rosie? It
Yeah.
was just, it was, they were missing their shooting boots, which is
Mm.
a big concern for Cavalry, because that's something that they need to have if they want to be able
Yeah.
to compete and to be able to, retain their regular season championship. What did you make of Cavalry in the first half? Because they were dominant, but it just didn't feel like they were really threatening beyond some of these off target shots.
Definitely. I mean, I thought like this was like shooting aside one of Moosey, like this was Moosey's best game this season, and it was one of these performances where you're like, oh, there he is, like he's getting his rhythm back, and we're about to see like a run of games where he's going to be just lighting up the league. But he just didn't have that finishing touch in this one, and yeah, a lot of a good chunk of these chances maybe they should have done better with. But you've mentioned there, and I completely agree with you. Pacific's defense were fantastic. The way that they worked as a group, I think this is their. I mean, you'd imagine maybe Mukambiwa come in for Lejeunesse to make their sort of their preferred back line. But I thought Lejeunesse was brilliant in this game as well. It really, I mean, he had a good chance to put them 1-0 up late on as well. But they worked so well with their midfield as well, and really stifled Cavalry at times and forced them into shots maybe they were rushing at times, and because of just how well they defended. That's not to say Cavalry probably shouldn't have done a bit better with some of their chances, but I think a lot of it was how well Pacific played. But the problem is, I mean, you look at this team and you look at the way they played for what they say up to about the 88th minute. When Pacific got the ball, is Rion Moore is on an island, and they're really struggling to transition in any attacking form whatsoever.
Yeah. I think that's like we mentioned with Lejeunesse coming in, and Thomas Meyer being there as well, and Alain Dom and Sean Melvin coming in. The backline was a brick wall,
Yeah,
honestly, in that match. And the fact that Cavalry had 10 shots either half, 10 shots inside the box, 10 shots outside the box, and no goals shows that, yeah, they were missing their shooting boots, obviously, but also the fact that they were able to be that Pacific were able to deny them any
yeah,
really, really good opportunities because of the way that they were structured in their defense. It was something that was, I think, very impressive from the entire back line. Luke, obviously, danger moving forward, but he was working really hard, both up and down the pitch, as well in the midfield in front of the in front of the defense, again limiting the Cavalry's attack to having to
Yeah.
shoot from quite some distance. It was a really, really good defensive performance from Pacific, but yeah, the attack. I think last week we saw Dario Zanata be a lot more involved. I
Mm.
thought Dario Zanata's performance last week was one that was notable. I think
Mhm.
this week he was a ghost comparatively. I think
Yeah,
he
they
was.
did, but they just it was so it just seemed like the attack was so far away from the rest of like the midfield and the defense.
Yeah. And it wasn't really until the very end where they had some opportunities where
Mm.
Rian Moore was finally sent in sort of
Mm.
behind, and Carducci managed to stuff him. Ayman Salouf, when he came on as well, he had a shot from distance that's forced Carducci into save. But beyond that, that was really it. It was
Yeah,
mostly Cavalry just constantly
yeah,
attacking. It kind of felt like attack versus defense. That's
yeah. A long
in
period.
large, yeah, for some long periods of this game. But yeah, little bits of concern for Tommy Wilden Jr. No wins in the first 3 games. They've scored and only 2 goals in 3 games.
Mm.
They
Same as
kept the
Valour.
clean sheet. Same as Valor. Same as Valor. They kept the clean sheet, but obviously the last 2 games they conceded 3. And it seems a bit of a far cry from the championship side that we saw at the end of last season. And the thing with me is I'm confused why.
Yeah,
I truly am, where it's like, yeah, okay, Meyer Bevan's not there. But Tobias Wachowski, we saw in the midweek, is a capable striker. And
yeah,
you have Malcolm Shaw as well, that I think showed glimpses of why
yeah. He
they
nearly,
got him.
he nearly took TMG's head off, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah, yeah.
What a hit!
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like they brought in players. Like Brooks had a couple of shots as well
Mm.
that looked a little dangerous, like we mentioned. Lucas Diaz, oh my lord, Lucas Diaz. He
Mm.
looks so good, but oh, you gotta be more aware of your surroundings on that one, because at the very end, Cavalry did manage to put the ball in the back of the net
Yeah,
because of Malcolm Shaw's shot, but it would rebound and it fell right to Lucas Diaz. But Lucas Diaz was just waiting at the penalty spot. He didn't even make an effort as the ball was in the box to try to get back onside. He was just there
yeah.
ball watching, and he managed to tap it in, but it was very clearly offside, and it was
Mm.
he's a young player, obviously, and I don't want to get on
Yeah.
his back too much, but it's like you gotta be a little bit more self-aware of your positioning,
Mm.
because you never know what happens, and you always want to be onside. You never want to be just lounging, offside, unless your name's Lionel Messi. But you always got to plan on there. So I feel like that could have been that would have popped the lid off of Atco Field if he scored
Mm.
that, and it would have counted. But yeah, I just feel like, I don't know, for you, what do you think is missing from this Cavalry side? Because as I look across in the games and I look across the personnel, I don't really understand why they're not firing on all cylinders yet.
Well, they struggled a lot last year as well. Like they weren't winning games by big margins. They were sort of overachieving on their expected goals, I believe, and they were relying on their defense. And this season, it's started similar. They're not finishing chances, and then they're having to see out games. And yeah, it's a similar kind of story from the beginning of last year, and it's going to be a tricky one. My my biggest thought on this, like we said, like this isn't a great start, but Rion Moore should have probably finished his chance in that 94th minute when he went on. It was a brilliant save from Carducci.
Mhm.
Um, but what would I mean, we're thinking this now from a 0-0 draw. I mean, if they had gone on and lost that game, where do you see Cavalry from there? Like there's like is if they lost this match, if that goal went in, does that send bigger concerns? But should it? Because it was only like a one-off thing. I'm really struggling with that thought at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Because obviously we're here to evaluate every
Mm.
game and the teams and their form, but it's a small sample size, so we can't be
Yeah.
too dramatic about it. But yeah, it's a weird one, because I'm genuinely thinking here, like I'm closing my eyes for the audio listeners, and I'm thinking it's like, if Cavalry would have lost that match, would I have treated and thought of the situation any differently? I don't think so. I don't think I would have, which can be good and bad.
Yeah.
Good in the sense that, it doesn't change the situation. It's not that drastic if they lose the match, but also bad because it's, even if they would have lost, it wouldn't have changed my perspective on how kind of lukewarm they've been to start the
Yeah.
season. And, every point matters, but from going from 2 points out of 9 to 1 point out of 9, not that great big of a difference.
Yeah, for a title defender. Yeah.
Exactly, for a title defender. So yeah, I don't know. I think I genuinely, Cavalry is one of those teams where I genuinely have to just wait and see, get a little bit of a bigger sample size to kind of really diagnose this team and see what's working, what's not, because they're a little bit confusing
Yeah.
right now for me.
And let's face
especially
it, they're only a point behind what they did last year. So it's not like from the first 3 games.
That's true. That's true. So I think, yeah, when you look at it that way, it's not that bad. But I think the fact that they went from regular season champions to this kind of slow start, I think has people having a little bit of concerns. But we'll see how Cavalry bounce back. Obviously, they will have a date with Vancouver Whitecaps next month as well. So we'll see how they deal with that alongside the regular season action. Pacific, on the other hand, as the graphic shows here, have had a really good start. Yeah, I got James Merriman there saying calma, calma, because a lot of people were doubting them. I think us included a little bit in terms of how they would start the season, and they've done really well. I mean, obviously 2 home wins, similar to Vancouver FC, but they went to Cavalry and drew, while Vancouver FC went there in the Canadian Championship and lost, so a little bit better than their rivals there. But 7 points out of a possible 9. Defensively, they've kept 3 clean sheets, the only team to have not been scored on in the league so far. And I think that's the greatest asset of Pacific right now is their defense. It's what's been able to pull them ahead of their opponents so far. Like we mentioned earlier, goal scoring is a little bit of a concern still, but the defense, there's always a saying, goals win you games, but defense win you championships. Do you feel like if they can get a little bit of the goals come in, Pacific might be a bit of a sleeper hit in the league this year? If they can continue being consistent in their defensive performances?
I think so. I think I said it at the beginning of the season. Like the parts that they've brought in, I'd like to see them try and be like more of a transitional attacking team, because their defense has shown straight away they can defend, but they can't get it. They're struggling to get it forward. And in the home games, they've tried to dictate possession and they've got their wins, but they haven't looked like they're going to create multiple strong goal scoring opportunities, like big chances. They can defend really well, and if they can improve the way they transition and attack, especially when they're playing away from home, they could be a really dangerous team. It's just trying to work out how to do that. And at the moment, and I think last season as well, that wasn't something that they were particularly hot on. So that's going to take a lot of work, and that's something that if James Merriman and his team can figure that out and how to get that out of his players, then like why, barring injuries, like why couldn't they keep on challenging? But like you and like most people watching Pacific, I just don't know if they can become this strong transitional attacking team.
Yeah, and it really is on if they can make that attack click in that way. Because I agree with you. I think as a transitional team, they have the players, you would think, that are capable of doing that. Zanata and Saloof as more pacey wingers. Josh Hurd,
pace,
yeah, Josh Hurd even has some pace on him, and he can cut in and dribble and be a threat. And Rian Moore, he can be that in behind striker, as we've seen, and he's got some pace in him, and he's physical too. It's just if they can be a little bit more coordinated in the attack, because in this match, like I meant, like Dario Zanata was a ghost, and I feel like he can be a really good player for them. So Yeah, some things to figure out, but I mean, even still, really good start. That the defense has helped them get to this point, and
Yeah.
we'll see how Pacific continue to build off of this. And if they can get some goals in them as well, then they could be a very serious team. And maybe a lot of people were saying last year was the year for them to win it. Maybe it's this year. We'll
Who
see.
knows?
Not too early to tell. Serial too early to tell. But that is it for our match week 3 roundup. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to go now to our power rankings. A little bit of a change from last week. Forge are still at the very top because, of course, they are. 3 wins out of 3. You can't knock them off. Pacific are up 1 to second after a really strong defensive performance. Atletico Ottawa are up to third after a good performance against Halifax. Vancouver FC down 2 because of their back-to-back losses. One was in the Canadian Championship, but still. Cavalry FC still 5th. Kind of, they drew. Can't really knock them, but still some concerns there. York United up 2 after the 3-0 thrashing of Vancouver FC. Valour FC up to 7th as well, up 1. And Halifax Wanderers down 2 after that tough defeat. And close between Halifax and Valour, I think, but the fact that Valour have scored an extra goal helps them out in the power rankings. So unfortunately for the Wanderers fans, the team's at the rock bottom of the power rankings. Hopefully they can switch things up and climb back up the table.
Yeah, and I mean let's be fair. Valour did really push Forge, and Halifax have just sort of not really been in it whatsoever. I think the one that was particularly tricky for me, and which I agreed with you on not eventually, but I did agree with you, but I was debating slightly, is obviously the Pacific and Ottawa, second and third, but because Pacific struggles going forward, but let's go Ottawa just haven't. It's just such a funny team, aren't they? That you just think it's really like, well, they're winning, they're undefeated, they got 7 points, but are they good? Are they like, it's so strange.
Yeah, and I think also Pacific's just clean sheet their defensive record. That was the biggest kind of differential between Pacific and Ottawa, and why I put them up the second over Ottawa is because of the defensive record. But yeah, that is it. Let us know what you think about our power rankings, and let us know what you think about the episode. Remember to follow us on all of our socials so you can keep up to date with where we upload. And if you like the episode, if you have some qualms with what we said, let us know. And if we like your comment.
Felipe. So yes. I went with Kalongo as my player of the week, but we didn't get yours.
Oh, right. How can I forget? Yeah, I was going to mention it. Yes. So my player of the week was Brian Wright. Not surprising there. 2 goals, 1 assist. I thought about giving it to Temi Antonoglu too, but I mean, Brian Wright, that was probably one of his greatest performances in his York career, so you got to give him a little bit of acknowledgement there. But yeah, thank you for catching that. Totally forgot about that. But yeah, let us know what you thought about this week's episode, and if we liked your comment or question, we might give you a shout out on the next show. But until next time, I'm Felipe Ojejo.
And I'm Matt Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.